Hey everyone! If you're like me, those perimenopause symptoms are driving you crazy. Well, I've got a little help for you. All you need to do is go to my midlifewithcourage.com website, and a little box is going to pop up that's going to ask you if you'd like to get my free ebook called Balancing Your Hormones. It's a short little guide with tips that you can use throughout the day, super easy, to help you balance out those hormones through the things that you do. So check it out, midlifewithcourage.com. Now let's get back to the show. You are listening to the Midlife with Courage podcast. This is where women in midlife come for inspiration, motivation, and sometimes a little education to help them flourish after 40. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Midlife with Courage. I am Kim Benoit, your host, and I'm very happy to have you all here. And I'm also very happy to have my guest here with me today. Her name is Betsy Pepine. Welcome to the podcast, Betsy.
Oh, thank you.
Today, we're going to talk about boxes. Not literally boxes, but let's get into that. But first, Betsy, why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us where in the world you are and what you do.
Sure. I live in Florida and I am a real estate broker, really a serial entrepreneur in all things real estate. So I own a brokerage, I own a property management company, I have a real estate school, I have a title company, I have Airbnbs, I just do a lot, anything to do with real estate, I love. And then probably what I'm most passionate about is my nonprofit, which is dedicated also to real estate, but it serves a segment of folks that would never utilize our services. So affordable housing and making it more accessible to everybody. And we raise money and help build homes for those in need. So that's what I do. And that's where I'm at.
Okay, perfect. I can't wait to talk to you about all of that. But let's start out. I always ask my guests to tell us about a time when you felt the most courageous or you showed courage.
It's funny I've never been asked that. And when you first said it, I immediately thought of courage and like demonstrating it with a big audience. But
Mm-hmm.
but for me, I would say that was not the case. For me, it was internal courage. I just had a significant amount of pressure from my family and probably myself to be a physician. So there was just a lot of expectation
Mm-hmm.
that my sisters and I would be physicians. And that was the pinnacle of achievement, of success, of admiration in our family. And that's kind of how I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything other than a physician would be considered a huge step down. And having the courage when I was my junior year in college to let my parents know that I was going to leave the pre-med track. It doesn't sound like a big thing, but it was for me because I felt a tremendous amount of pressure and I was so fearful of losing connection with my family and status within my family.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so I did that. And I think I did honestly lose status and connection for a while, but it was worth it because I couldn't go into a profession that didn't make my heart sing. So,
I love it. And I love that you recognize that at a younger age. I think a lot
well,
of us decide later on in life that, oh, this isn't what I wanted to do.
yeah. Well, but I didn't even, I mean, I made that decision, but I ended up still going into the healthcare industry
Mm-hmm.
to kind of straddle, I really loved marketing and business. So I went into pharmaceutical marketing, but
Ah,
that wouldn't have been my choice. I think I did that just I didn't totally step outside the box, but I was kind of I had trepidation. So I kind of put one leg out and did that. So,
sure. I love that. That's wonderful. And I think those internal struggles we have are courageous because our families are important to us, to most of us. And yeah, what they say matters. And if they've told you, your whole life, you need to do this, well, oh, okay.
mhm.
Gosh, to go against that,
Yeah,
that does show a lot of courage, I think.
yeah.
So, yeah. Amazing. So, where would you like to start? I mentioned boxes earlier because you wrote a book called Breaking Boxes. How did that all come about? Where would you like to start with your story?
Yeah. So when I was in my mid 40s, I started growing discontent. After the pharmaceutical industry, I experienced a divorce and a layoff. And that made me really reevaluate, okay, what do I really want to do? And I've always loved real estate and decided to go into real estate. So that was great. And my businesses started thriving, very blessed in that way. I also had great children, still have great children. And so my life on the outside looked wonderful. And so for quite a while, honestly, it took me, I was in denial. I would try to say I didn't have the right to be unhappy, or it was just in my mind. I really am happy because this is what I saw around me. I kind of had checked off all the boxes of what it meant to be successful. And I had made that assumption and thus happy, but I wasn't happy, or I wasn't as fulfilled as I thought I should be or could be. And so I started this journey of, I've always journaled, but did more journaling, did meditation, started yoga, did therapy, one-on-one therapy for the first time in my life, and really started to uncover what was the source of my unhappiness. And the common thread was this feeling of containment and confinement of these, what I call boxes, these expectations, stereotypes, expectations, labels that were either placed on me or I placed on myself, but either served me at one time and I outgrew that, or no longer, or never served me at all, and I was not aware of that at the time, and started to be more conscious of that and dismantling the boxes that no longer served me. Mm-hmm. And then when I had all my stories and I would share these stories with colleagues, friends, family, they would share their stories. And I realized how universal of a condition this is. It's a human condition. You don't see, I've got two dogs sitting beside me. You don't see dogs contemplating what boxes that they're in. And it's just meant for me. And, they don't have these fears of exiting a box. So it's a human condition. And I decided to write the book because it seemed like there was a lot of people who were stuck and they didn't know how to get unstuck. And I thought, if I could just help one person uncover a box that they didn't even realize that they were in, because they are everywhere. Once you have this awareness, you will see them everywhere. And it's not just, I'm not a victim. I've put myself in boxes. I've put other people in boxes. I mean,
Right.
it's just everywhere. So anyway, I wrote the book to help people extricate themselves from boxes that no longer serve them.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you're right. It's like it's a human condition. And do you think that people, like women especially, since that's who's listening, they find themselves realizing that they are in these boxes or these barriers that are put?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think
Mm-hmm.
it happens more at this time of our life, or do you think it's something that kind of happens all times?
It's hard for me to say because I am at this point in my life. So, and that's
Exactly.
when
Yeah.
that's when it happened. So I don't know. I think we're put in them, and my stories in my book share it. I mean, in hindsight, I have felt that I've been in boxes since I was very little, but I didn't understand the harm that could be. So I think, at least as I got older and you had more input from outside, your family of origin becomes less influential, and your own sense of self and what you read and learn and surround yourself with becomes more important. Then you start to learn that. And maybe it does take a couple of decades under your belt on life on earth to even have that, even have the ability, because most people don't have the number of life experiences that a 40 or 50-year-old has when they're 20, so I think it may be a matter of just life experiences, and you just need to have accumulated enough of them and be exposed to enough different people and environments and thoughts and ideas to reach that point.
Sure, sure. So I wrote down what you had said earlier about you felt like you didn't have the right to be unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge,
Mm-hmm.
because people on the outside, oh, everything's wonderful. And how many times have we heard stories where, oh my gosh, that person looks they're top of the world, they've got everything, and then
Yeah.
they're not feeling it.
Right.
Was that something, did you kind of gradually get to that feeling that something had to change, or would you have an aha moment?
I didn't have an aha moment. I struggled with it for about a year, like
Okay.
what to do with this. And I just finally, and this may be when the this time in our life conversation comes in, because when you get to be, I'm 56 now. when you get to be 56, like you clearly see that half of your life is over. I'm very optimistic.
Yeah. Like
So
glass
I
half
feel like,
full.
but I look at life as a bell-shaped curve. And so now I'm at the top of the hill looking down. And so everything becomes so much more precious and time sensitive, because you suddenly, because in the first half of your life, you're just looking up, and you're just, what's the next thing, and you have all these milestones. They're built in to the way you progress through your age, milestone birthdays, milestone graduations, your first car, your first prom, all these firsts. And then your first child, I mean, it goes on, and then your kids leave the nest, and you're looking at the next 50 years, and you don't have that built-in structure of milestones and positive things to look forward to, celebrations, things like that. You have to really be intentional. And so I think you just become more intentional about your life at that point, or I hope we do.
Yeah.
And making sure that, you know, we live it to our fullest. And that's when it was just like, I can't keep living like this and and letting it end like this and feeling like this. Because I would have felt like it was a life wasted,
Yeah. That
So.
that's so interesting because as you were talking, it was my light bulb moment a little bit because we have a path kind of set for us, or we think we have this path with our first and all those little things. And then we get to this point, like you said, and the path can be whatever we want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of scary in a way,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
'cause,
Mm-hmm.
well, now what do I do? But
Right.
yeah, and I totally agree, like with that, we're at the top and now time is like finite. It's not
Mm-hmm.
unlimited. So talk a little bit about, okay, you got that, and now we have 50 more years, and how do we break out of those boxes that
Mm-hmm.
we find ourselves in?
Yeah. So for me, the first thing is being aware of being in the box. And, I don't know if other people struggle with this, but I did, and I'm still learning, but I wasn't raised in an environment where we expressed our feelings and emotions and were encouraged to name them and claim them and live them and feel them. It was really the opposite. And I think it may have been the era at the time where it's just, what what do you think, not how do you feel, and what do the facts tell you. It's all kind of data driven. And for me, the messaging was that the feelings are fleeting, they're irrational, they're can't rely on them. So really learning, I mean, I felt like I was in kindergarten when I was in therapy. The first time I went, she's like, so how are you feeling today? And I said, I feel great. She's like, well, what other emotions do you feel? And I honestly thought it was like a trick question. I'm like, well, I feel good or I feel bad. And she's like, well, what other, give me some other adjectives. And I really had no vocabulary to describe any other feelings. And so she gave me a little color wheel thing. It's an emotions wheel. You can Google it, but it was like, I feel like I have so much education, but not in this realm. I mean, I really felt like I was in kindergarten and looking at all these emotions, and there's categories, and then you get further and further finite into exactly that emotion that you're feeling, and then that feelings are okay and they need to be expressed. And so that is my first sign that I might be in a box, is when my body will tell me before my mind will tell me. And I think that is true. I think our bodies know before our minds can think it.
Yes.
And so a practice of just being very intentional about checking in with how you feel. And so I have an app on my phone. It's a free app. It's called How We Feel. And it checks in with me several times a day. It's wonderful. And you can set it for whatever frequency you want, and it'll vibrate or whatever, ding, whatever you want. And then it literally has all these bubbles, and you check the bubble that you pick, the bubble that you feel at that moment. And if you want, you can put in, what environment are you in? What are you doing? And who are you surrounded by? And you can start to see patterns. What environments, people, and situations bring you up, and which of those things deplete your energy. And you can start.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. For me, it's interesting. And then I keep my color wheel, my emotions wheel with me too, to help me. So anyway, getting in touch with your feelings, understanding when there's a disconnect, and then figuring out what that is. Some people don't have that problem. Some people already know the box they're in, they need to get out. So, but they're not getting out. And so usually that means that there is a fear that's the obstacle. And so what I have found is fears can be categorized into a couple of big things. One is fear of failure, huge one. Again, it's a human condition. My dog is not wondering if she's going to fail today. That never crosses her mind. It's a box, right? Failure is a box. It's a mental construct, and it's based on a judgment you're placing, but it doesn't exist except for in your mind. So for me, I truly do not believe failure exists for me. There's a quote, and I think sometimes it's misunderstood. Failure is not an option. It's not that things don't go the way things are never going to not go the way I planned. I don't define that as failure, because for me, a worst case scenario, the outcome wasn't what I expected. I have to pivot, and I learned a wonderful lesson that I will take with me for the rest of my life. That's worst case scenario. How is that bad?
That is not bad.
Right? Yeah. And so what happens, I feel like fears just manifest in our minds, but if we actually think about them, and I'm a big proponent of writing them down, they become very manageable. And so that's how I deal with the fear of failure. That one doesn't really impact me at all anymore. The other fears that are common that keep people in boxes, myself included, is fear of loss. So it could be loss of status. I felt that when I told my parents I didn't want to go to medical school. I definitely feared and felt a loss of status within the family system. Very real, but I lived through it. I made it, and now, 30 years later, I tell whenever I sense it's a status thing for me, that's ego talking, and you're not your ego. So for me, I just visually put my ego, say, Betsy, put your ego on the shelf and move forward. Don't let that impact you. And that's really helped me deal with situations where I'm fearing things because of a status thing. The other two big fears, fear of social connection. So sometimes when you start changing, it makes other people uncomfortable. It does. It just does. And so most likely some part of your social circle is going to change, but that's not bad. There's a great book, Necessary Endings. We look at things as, I used to look at things as everything needs to last forever. No, I mean, it's like, I'm divorced. That relationship completed itself, right? It didn't end. It completed. It fulfilled its mission. That's very different than what I think a lot of people think when they think divorce and this, traumatic ending. No, it came to its natural ending. We both learned and grew as much as we could, and we had to move on. So if you could think of social connections in that way, not everyone is meant to be with us forever, and you're not meant to be in other people's lives forever. And what I do recommend is shore up the connections, because we are social creatures. We need social connection. So if you're moving towards a new direction, find people that are in that new circle. I always do that whenever I'm trying to, like right now, I'm a starving artist trying to learn some art techniques. And so I join Facebook groups, I join masterminds. I put, questions out there. I'm trying to get into a new circle in my play life. And so I always try to surround myself with some people that are already well integrated in that life that I can connect with. And that helps shore up those connections, because I'm going to lose some people on the other end.
Right.
And you can do that with your professional life, with your spiritual life, with your fitness life, any of your life pillars. You can seek out people who are already there for you. And what I have found, and I see it more and more the older I get, most people want to help you. If they know you want help and they have the resources and knowledge, they will help you. You just have to ask. So shore up those social connections. That makes that fear of loss of social connection less intimidating. And then the other one is fear of financial insecurity. When you're going to switch a career, especially, that does sometimes create a change in income. Maybe it's temporary, maybe it's permanent, but you need to be ready for that and plan for that. And so now more than ever, I mean, when I was switching careers, we didn't have the gig economy. We can't drive for Uber or Amazon. We didn't have, my goodness, we didn't have the internet and being able to have all these jobs remote and online. So there's so many options to help people have supplemental income while they're learning something new and moving in a new direction with their career. So just having a plan for those fears and tackling them head on, writing them out on paper. Then once you have that done, for me, the next step is then break down whatever that goal is of yours into baby steps. And I like really baby steps, things that I can do today, not even a week from now. That's hard for me. I like to, what can I commit to today? Maybe it's just 15 minutes a day. Like, and that's what I do with my art. Okay, Betsy, you can do 15 minutes a day and commit to that to move towards what my end goal is.
Hey, ladies. I just wanted to thank you for listening to this episode. And I also wanted to remind you that there are a couple easy ways for you to support the show, and they are both free. The first thing, maybe you've already done this. That's great. Thank you so much. Go to the platform where you listen and click the follow button. Super easy. You'll get notifications of every episode the day they come out. If you want to get those notifications earlier, you can go ahead to my website, www.midlifewithcourage.com, and subscribe to the website. What that means is you'll get an email every Monday with an inspirational message and a link to the episode so that you can listen to it ahead of everyone else. So if that sounds great to you, I would love for you to do that. Join me on my website. You'll also get notified of some wonderful new things I have coming down the road. I can't wait to share them with you. So remember, follow and subscribe. Let's get back to the episode.
Sweet. What kind of art do you do? Are you painting?
Well, I've always done art. I've always dabbled in art.
Okay.
And it's all different mediums. So, and I used to do art shows and all this. This is all like on side stuff. It's,
cool.
Never had to live on my art income, which is great because my art has cost me more than I've made. But I've really gotten into now just alcohol markers and colored pencils and gel pens. And I don't draw, but I like to literally color, but hopefully in a more sophisticated way than I did when I was in grade school. Using different
very cool. That's so cool. A little side note there. I was just curious on all that. Talking about your social connections and losing people sometimes, and it's okay. We have a group of women that I text with, and one of the group left a couple of years ago because it wasn't serving her, and that's fine. We still have relationships with her, just not in that group, and it's fine. But and the other thing you were talking about, like how your marriage ended, and it was okay that it came to its natural end. And that reminded me, I was a nurse for 27 years and I retired. I don't like that word retired, but I retired from it, but I thought I'd be sad about it, but I really wasn't because I was done. I did what I could do and now I'm done.
Right.
And so now what's next?
Right. I love it.
Yeah. So I love that, kind of related to that. So a lot of people, I'm only a year ahead of you, older than you, but so we kind of grew up in the same kind of generations and stuff. But going to therapy, like you mentioned, that was the first time you've ever gone. I think that's something that a lot of us, at least I'm in Wisconsin, we're supposed to be tough and you just power through whatever happens. And, I think it would be hard to make that decision to get some help with therapy, like mental, emotional. It's a tough thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it was because I think, again, I was raised in an environment where, and in an era, again, I'm 56. So growing up, like therapy right now, like for my daughters, like that generation, they're all into therapy. They love it. People talk about it. People don't even think twice about it. But in the way when I was raised, definitely you did not share that you were in therapy if you were in therapy. Like that was not considered a cool thing. So
it's a little secret.
That's how I was raised. And so it did take me, I won't say that I just decided one day to go and went. It took me a while to say, I'm going to do this and commit to myself. And it was more like, for me, I've always been a fan of coaches. So I've had a business coach for over a decade,
Mhm.
and I have mentors in different areas of my life. And I thought, well, how is that different? Like, what if I just called this person a life coach, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who has expertise in an area that I need help in.
Mhm.
So that's how I kind of wrap my head around it. And now
Yes.
I'm totally fine with it. But it did, you know, make me pause.
Yeah, for sure. If we can go back to like, I just love the boxes. I don't know why. But do you think like I have friends who will tell me that, what I'm doing is like limiting me, or, do you think other people kind of recognize those boxes or those boundaries that you probably shouldn't be in before you do sometimes? Have you ever
Hmm.
experienced that or thought about that?
I haven't thought about that. I think I think that could be, especially I'm thinking, I think, and you're talking about probably a career. I'm thinking that could
Yeah.
happen with relationships where,
Yeah.
you're in a relationship, and I think there are people who can see things
Mm.
that we're just too close to it, so we can't be objective about it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's true. Although I also think that just be a little bit careful that people aren't imposing, what they think is best for them on you because you're
Yes.
different than them. So that's where I would just be a little cautious.
Yeah, that's funny that you bring that up too, because I've been like with my business, I've been doing some things, and I was talking to someone who, oh, you should do this and this, and another person who I respect said, make sure that you're doing what you want and not what that person wants. But and it took her
Yeah.
telling me that to go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point. Even, relationships, business, whatever it happens to be. So
Yeah.
yeah. So where can our listeners find your book?
So the book is on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble, all major book retailers online. You can find it. It's also on my website, and my website is just my name, betsypepine.com. And the
Okay.
book is called Breaking Boxes, Dismantling the Metaphorical Boxes That Bind Us.
Oh, love it. Okay. I also want to talk about your nonprofit a little bit more too. Tell us
Yeah.
how that all came about.
So when I was in business school, before I was in real estate, one of the classes I took, and I couldn't believe you actually could get credit for it, but I was in Philadelphia. You got to go into West Philadelphia and gut row homes and rebuild them, renovate them with donated supplies and labor, which was us, the graduate students, and sell these homes to at-risk families. And we sold them at no profit. So it was a wonderful opportunity for these families.
Hmm.
And I saw how housing could change the trajectory of a family. And that
Wow.
feeling stayed with me. So then when I started in real estate and the businesses were self sustaining, I think it's just natural to want to give back. And I wanted to give back in a way that made sense to me. And since I'm passionate about real estate and I saw this in my graduate school work, I thought, how can I meld these needs together? And so I created this nonprofit so that we could help a segment of people who will never use a realtor. They don't think they can even afford to buy a home. And so we recently have partnered with Habitat for Humanity, and we
Mm.
sponsor homes. We fundraise, our agents and staff work alongside the future homeowner, help build the home with them. And then what I love is that it's truly considered a hand up, not a handout.
Mm.
So they have to do 240 hours on their home. They have to do a whole host of educational classes, including finance classes to learn how to manage money, and also classes on home maintenance because they've never owned a home. And so it really tees them up for success, because the last thing we want to do, Habitat wants to do, is foreclose on them. And so
Right.
really, it's been so impactful to me and hopefully my agents and staff. And then we also invite the community to come help us on the build days, so that if they don't want to play a bigger role in our organization, at least they could spend a couple of hours, helping the family build a home.
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad you said that about it's not a hand out, it's a hand up.
Mm.
We have Habitat for Humanity here, and I've actually been involved with them a little bit. And, it's there's a process. They just don't give people homes.
Oh yeah.
They have
And
to prove that they can, like you said, put in the time to help build it, but they also that they can, are able to keep paying on it and all that
yeah.
that
Yeah.
practical stuff too. So yeah, wonderful, wonderful organization. And I'm glad you've got do you want to say the name of your nonprofit too so people can hear
Yeah, the
that?
nonprofit is Pepine Gives, and that's got its own website, pepinegives.com. And
Okay.
always looking for donations and help. If you want to come join us on a build day, we would love to have
Sure.
you.
Well, I might maybe I have to come to Florida. You're based in Florida, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Oh yeah, I'll come there in next January, when it's 80 below here. Just kidding. Anyway, no, but well, Betsy, before we say goodbye, is there any one last little nugget of knowledge or message you want to give to the listeners?
Um, I just hope that your listeners have the courage. We open this conversation with courage,
Mhm.
have the courage to say yes to themselves. I think a lot of what keeps us in boxes is we say yes to things. For every yes, we are saying no to something else. And are we really evaluating with intention what that no is? And often that no is you're saying no to yourself. And so if you're saying that, just make sure it's worth the trade off.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, Betsy. Well, thank you so much. We will talk to you soon.
Well, thank you, Kim. My
Mhm.
pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Midlife with Courage podcast. If you liked what you heard, I would love it if you would leave me a review. It is so appreciated. Or even better, send a link of this episode to a friend. Until next time, take care of your beautiful self.